Hi there, welcome to Rent Prep for Landlords. I'm Andrew Schultz, Community Manager here at Rent Prep. I'm also a licensed real estate broker with over 14 years of experience in the property management and rental property industries. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about the BRRRR Method. What is it? How does it work? And can it help you to grow your real estate investments? We've got a lot to cover today, so let's get to it. If you've been involved with real estate for any period of time, chances are that you've heard someone mention the BRRRR Method at some point. It can be incredibly powerful when used correctly, and it can absolutely to help you grow your real estate portfolio of holdings. So what exactly is it? The BRRRR Method is an investment strategy where an investor will find a property that's in need of a rehab. They're going to buy it, rehab it, rent it out, refinance it, and repeat. That's the whole video in one sentence. Take that, run with it. Good luck. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Obviously, I'm kidding. But those are the steps, the basic steps involved in the BRRRR Method. Buy the property, rehab the property, rent the property out, refinance the property, take the funds from that refi, and use it to repeat it on the next one. It's that simple. It's pretty elegant in its simplicity, as a matter of fact. Of course, it's typically not as easy as rattling off a sentence and cashing a check. So let's get into the nitty-gritty a little bit more here and see if we can make some sense of it. So step one in the process is to buy a property, but obviously it can't be just any property. You're looking for a property that needs some form of rehab such that you can pick it up for less than what the market value of that property is. Different markets are going to operate under different financial conditions, but the typical rule that most investors will follow here is that you're looking for a property that you can purchase as well as rehab and still be at 70% or less of the after repair or as complete value. So if you buy a property for $50,000 and put $20,000 into it, you're now at $70,000. You need to be able to sell that property for at least $100,000 when you're all done with it in order for that to meet that criteria, essentially the 70% loan to value after you've gone through and put in not only the acquisition, but also the rehab costs. You need to add value with your renovations enough to ensure that you're able to refinance the property at the end of the BRRRR process, at the back end of the situation. So why is that 70% number so important? Most banks are allowing you at this point in time, and this was recorded in August of 2023, most banks are allowing you at this time to take out somewhere between 75 and 80% loan to value on the property. So using the example math from earlier, if you're all in at $70,000 and you're refinancing at $80,000, 80% loan to value, you're essentially walking away with a $10,000 check, which you can then use as the down payment on your next BRRRR property. Now, there are a lot of ways to finance distressed properties depending on the situation that you find yourself in. Typically, you're going to wind up using either a hard money lender or a private money lender, and they're going to charge you a much higher interest rate than what a traditional bank would while you're doing the project, but they understand that you're looking to get in and out of these projects, or at least get in and out of the financing portion of the project as quickly as possible. They're almost acting as a bridge funding or a mezzanine funding, depending on how the deal is structured. And that's kind of where hard money and private money lenders would fall into a situation like this. They can structure deals in any number of different ways. Some require a full principal, interest, taxes, and insurance payment, and as well as putting in escrows and things of that nature. Others will just require a principal and interest payment, and they're going to leave you to handle your own tax and insurance payments. And then others will structure the deal as interest only. A lot of times you won't even have to make a principal payment. You're just paying that you're making that interest payment on a monthly basis during the duration of the project, and then you're refinancing out on the back end. The length of time that these deals are in place can vary quite a bit. It's going to depend on typically on the deal as well as on who your financer is. But the goal is typically to get in and out of these hard money or private money lender situations as fast as possible due to the higher interest rates. We're typically seeing interest rates in the 14 to 18% range on private money and hard money lending, whereas normal mortgage rates are sitting around 7.5% right now. And again, this is recorded in August of 2023. Back in the 2 to 3% interest rate days, we were seeing sometimes 10 and 12% interest rates on hard money and private money lending. So those rates have definitely gone up. There are also banking institutions that offer construction loans, rehab loans, and 203K loans, which is an FHA rehab loan product. Typically, we're seeing these construction loans and rehab loans, at least, with smaller banking institutions and credit unions. the type of institutions that are going to hold their loans on their own books rather than package them into a mortgage-backed security and resell them on the open market. If you're not sure what an MBS is, what a mortgage-backed security is, do yourself a favor, hop on Netflix and watch The Big Short, because that movie explains an MBS better than I'm ever going to be able to. But the point here is that the bank holding these loans in-house. They're not reselling them on the open market, so they can do things like offering a one closing mortgage. And essentially, those are a really unique financing opportunity that you're not going to see with some of the bigger banks. Essentially, the bank loans that you purchase, or the bank loans you the purchase and rehab funds on a line of credit in that instance. And then once the rehab is complete, the bank will go ahead and refinance the property at the end of everything. And the bank then rolls that line of credit, which is what they're refining, into your mortgage at an 80% loan to value number. So essentially, if you've had the property and you've spent less than 80% of the loan to value, more than likely you're going to be able to refinance that property and get back everything that you have into it. So now that you own the property, it's time to rehab it. Rehab is generally going to be the hardest part of the process, especially if you aren't used to working on construction projects, or if you're lacking an understanding of what construction should cost and how long it should take. You need to have a pretty strong plan as to what you want to do prior to buying the property. Going back to our $100,000 after repair value home that we purchased for $50,000, if you're going to find out that you actually need to spend $50,000 in repair on that property versus the $20,000 that you had initially quoted yourself because you missed a foundation issue, for instance, or you missed a rather large roof issue, something along those lines, you're now right at your after repair value, and you're not going to be able to refinance this property at the end of the tunnel. So if you're not a strong estimator, you're going to want to bring a contractor with you through the property before you make your offer. Sometimes, maybe even oftentimes, that's not going to be possible. Essentially, you're going to get your schedule, the contractor's schedule, and the seller's schedule, and you're trying to coordinate all three of these to be on the same page so that everybody can meet at the same time. And oftentimes, that's a challenge that you're simply not going to be able to meet. And if you don't get the property after you've gone through and had that meeting with everybody and walked through the property, is your contractor now just out that time and out that money for the time spent putting the estimate together with nothing to show for it? Essentially, what I'm saying here is you're going to need to have a very, very strong relationship with your contractor if you're not in a position where you can go through and analyze and price a project out yourself. A lot of the time, you need to make a snap-second decision. You have to make a quick decision, especially if you're not the only one who's bidding on the property. And in a situation like this, it's very easy to walk through too quick and miss a major building component that needs to have attention paid to it, and suddenly your budget is blown before you've even closed on the property. Rehabbing properties is not for the faint of heart. A couple of mistakes can be the difference between profitability and pain. One additional thing that I want to talk about with regards to rehabbing properties is that you have to look deeper than the cosmetics when you're doing your rehab work. Beauty in a rental property is more than just skin deep. If you ignore the major mechanical concerns, such as old pipes, knob and tube wiring, old furnaces, old water heaters, roof with peeling shingles, things of that nature, you're setting yourself up for failure. If you spent all the rehab budget on the cosmetic stuff, move a tenant in, and then the furnace fails the month after the tenant moves in, are you going to have the money to replace that furnace? Start with the mechanicals and the building systems when you're looking at rehab costs. You can always come back to cosmetics between tenants, or you could upgrade something during a tenancy if it becomes a problem, as long as you can get it to the point where the property will be rentable. But tenants get very, very mad when pipes burst and ruin all their stuff. Let's move on to our next step in the process, which is renting. We've spoken a lot over the years about how to go about listing apartments for rent, how to take the best possible photos and videos for your marketing, how to go about screening your tenants to increase the chance of a successful tenant placement, and so much more. I'm not going to sit and rehash all of that in this video. If you do want to get a hold of that content, check out our YouTube page at youtube.com/rentprep. There's a ton of content out there, and you can certainly go through some of our backlog videos to get access to all of that stuff and more. That said, when it comes time to complete a credit and background check on your applicant, head on over to rentprep.com and choose from one of the several screening options available. The one point I will hammer home on tenant screening is to make sure that you screen every single applicant using a written set of fair housing compliant criteria and screen every applicant the same every single time. If you have a good, compliant procedure and you follow it the same way every single time you screen a tenant, you greatly reduce the chances of placing a tenant that's going to default on you, and you also greatly reduce the opportunity for a fair housing violation. Keep in mind that screening is only one part of this step. You're also going to want to go ahead and sign a lease with the tenant, outlining the terms and conditions of the rental. I highly recommend speaking with your real estate attorney to see if they have a landlord-friendly lease that you can acquire or purchase from them. It's worth spending the money on your lease from your attorney, in my opinion, versus just going online and downloading one. Your attorney knows the laws for your state, your county, and your municipality. The internet, by and large, does not. So you can acquire a lease or buy a lease from your attorney's office. That's going to get you a lot further in the process than just downloading something online that you're going to have to sit there and have modifications made to, or make modifications yourself, and then you're still left with a lease that you're not entirely sure is compliant with your state's laws. It's worth the money to spend on a good lease to make sure that you're protecting yourself and protecting your asset as you go through the rental process. Now, once you've gone ahead and placed that tenant, you're on to the next step in the process, which is to refinance the property. Going back to our $100,000 after repair value home, we're going to say that we got lucky and we only put $15,000 on top of our $50,000 purchase price in terms of rehab costs. So now you're at a situation where you've decided that you wanted to put some sweat equity into the property. That's where you made up that $5,000 between the 15 and the 20, just by going through, and maybe you decided that you're going to paint the interior of the property rather than hiring a painter. So rather than spending $20,000 on that rehab, you've now spent 15. You've built in another $5,000 in sweat equity in the property, and this is where it really starts to pay off. At this point, the property has been rehabbed. The tenants have signed their lease, they've paid their deposit, they've paid their rent, they've moved into the unit. You're now sitting at $65,000 in expenses, $50,000 for the acquisition and $15,000 for your rehab. And we know that the property is now worth $100,000 based on nearby sales in the same neighborhood. So we're going to go back to our bank and reapproach them to refinance this property at that 80% loan to value that we discussed earlier. And that means that you're looking at a mortgage of $80,000 against expenses of only $65,000. You're now walking away with a check for $15,000 at the close of that refinance, which gives you the funds to jump into your next process, your next BRRRR property. Now here's the real fun part. Let's take a look at your financing on the front end. You were smart and found a local bank that allowed you to enter the construction loan with only 20% of your acquisition cost, and they financed all of the rehab costs. So your acquisition cost on this deal was $50,000, meaning you needed to put $10,000 down. The bank is refinancing it at $80,000. Total expenses are $65,000, and you have $10,000 into the deal. You have your $80,000 minus the $65,000 leaves you with the $15,000, and you only had $10,000 into the deal to start things off. Did you just get paid $5,000 to add a property to your portfolio? Yes, you did. It's free real estate. Now, it's not always a slam dunk like this. More often than not, the math doesn't work out quite like this, where the bank will only go 75% loan to value instead of 80% loan to value. So the deal structure doesn't work, or the rehab is going to cost more than you anticipated, but not enough to sink you. There are a lot of ways that BRRRR deals can go a little bit sideways but still work, and there are a lot of ways that they can go a lot sideways and completely sink the deal, sometimes once you're already in the middle of it. Plan ahead and have multiple exit strategies available to you at any time during the deal. So there you have it. The BRRRR method can be great, especially when applied to the correct property with the right rehab costs, with the right after repair value. Have you ever done a BRRRR deal in your market? Drop us a comment down below and let us know where you're seeing success using this method. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Andrew Schultz with renprep.com, and we'll talk to you soon.